Hello and welcome back to another episode. So today we have the September 2019 issue of ELLE. So this will be the third installment of the September flagships. Okay, and we can see here ELLE is 7/16 of an inch thick. So it's the thinnest of the three. And as I've said before, these used to be 1 inch thick, and now ELLE is less than a half. It's at 7/16. So it just shows that the fashion houses and the bag makers, right, and the perfumers, they're just not advertising as they once did. Okay, the industry is in a state of decline. So with that out of the way, let's get started on the images. Okay, on the cover is Angelina Jolie. So here, this isn't so bad, I mean, it's Gucci, as I've said before, Gucci is derailing. It's been on a 6-month derailment, and it hit a low last month. So this image really, all things considered, is not really that bad. Okay, so it looks like they've turned, right? They've hit bottom, and they're trying to turn back up and recover from that 6-month slide. Here, we've already seen this. I'm not going to spend any time on this. Mocking of the homeless, Prada. We've seen this. So here we have Kate Moss, who's coming back. She's been modeling for Giorgio Armani. Just wonderful. Really nice. And here we have Claudia Schiffer, who's also making a return. So we've seen Lauren Hutton, Kate Moss, Christy Turlington, and now Claudia Schiffer is actually making a comeback. Unbelievable. Again, if this speaks volumes, absolutely volumes, on how how the industry has just basically imploded from nepotism. And I think they're realizing it, and they're trying to unwind that a little bit, right? Trying to reel that back in. And the first steps I think they're taking is reviving the supermodels from yesteryear. Okay, that's phase 1. And I think phase 2 is they're going to get more models like Taylor Hill, who really bring quite a look to the modeling industry, which was always supposed to have been models exactly like Taylor Hill, right? So again, this is a phased operation, this trying to revive the modeling industry and this fashion industry. It's 2 phases. Phase 1 is to revive all the supermodels from yesteryear. Phase 2, completely start over again and get back to honest to goodness models, right? Real, true models. So we'll see how that goes. Ducky Thought, I think she's got a wonderful look, right? She really deserves to be a model because she has the look. Yes, we've covered this image on the left before. The post-processor, the Photoshop technician, has taken it too far into the blue. And this image on the right has been a little over-processed. But what I'm talking about is the caliber of the models. And I've mentioned this before, Guess has always maintained a very high threshold for models. The women who will model for them, they set the bar incredibly high. And right, the women who model for them are definitely of the highest caliber as far in terms of model, right? As far as facially, right? Attractive looking women, very shapely. So Guess has always been, just maintaining that standard much more than any other advertiser. guess is the standard bearer, so hats off to them. Here we have more of Stephen Meisel's photography, Christy Turlington, and designer Marc Jacobs. Right, we see here, this is a little bit cut off, but I've seen it in other magazines. It says 400TX, and that means 400 ISO, and TX is the abbreviation for Tri-X. So this is basically what they're trying to show here is the frame, 400 Tri-X. And as I said before, we know Tri-X is a negative film, it's not a positive film. But what they've done here, obviously, so we can view it, is they've turned basically the negative, this play on a negative, they've turned it into a positive, so we can actually, actually see it, right? We don't have the inversion that would be apparent in a negative, right? So again, it's just very well done. Hermes, they're continuing on with these, right? These play on these kerchiefs, right? And they've been doing this for some months now, probably close to a year. As I've said, some of these different companies run serials. Dolce & Gabbana's serial has been running for years, probably 7 years now. Now it's morphed and changed just like a soap opera. But you have some companies like Gucci, the Mac still run. A serial is 3 months, and they'll abandon it and go to something else. And so does Valentino. They do the same thing. It's a 3-month serial. But here, Hermes has been running this serial for probably over 1 year now, close to 1 year. And it's really nice. It works. This play, right? If you go back through the magazines 1 year ago, you'll see this. It's some variation on a theme of them doing some type of artistic work with these kerchiefs. It's really quite nice. Okay, we saw this in Vogue. Vogue, this was hypersexualized, so I've forgotten what it looks like here. So let's take a look and see how sexualized it is. This is Natalie Portman. She's been modeling for them for some time. Okay, and it's not. So they've toned it down here, right? They've toned it down here in ELLE. It's not as loud and sexualized as it was in Vogue, right? But I don't want to repeat the interpretation of this image because we've already covered this. I would just please, if you're just viewing this, right, without the proper context of what it looked like in Vogue, I would ask you to go back and visit Vogue and then, I explain what all this symbolism is. But it's really nice. It's very well done. Okay, so this is another trend. As we've seen before, these magazines, the photographers plagiarize each other quite badly. And we've seen it years ago. It's old now, but we saw it with Hard Hands. One photographer did it, and then all the photographers started plagiarizing, right? And it's almost like a chain reaction. Then about a year ago, and it's still going on, is strobeless photography. So one photographer did a shoot without strobes, photographed the models in ambient, and that was yet another chain reaction. And we're still seeing it now. It's going away a little bit. It's not as prevalent as it was just even a few months ago, but we're still seeing some remnants of the strobeless photography. And what I've noticed now is new for this month. A lot of these advertisements, they're introducing blur, right? And some of it looks natural, like a slow shutter. The model is moving, and the photographer is using a slow shutter to get a real, genuine blur. And some of this is being done in post. Right, they're using some clone tools and cloning, right, to give it a blur type effect. But this is yet another trend, right? Again, I talk about the lack of originality in these photographers. They'll see something and they plagiarize each other just like crazy, right? And they should never do that, right? You should never plagiarize another photographer. But this is the trend now. So this is yet the latest trend, right? Is this blur. Okay, and I'm just wondering how many months is this going to last before yet this latest trend, right? Here today, gone tomorrow, before this dies out. So what, I mean, how long is it going to last? 3 months, 6 months, a year? But it's eventually going to die, and this cliche plagiarism is yet going to be replaced with yet another cliche attempt at plagiarizing other photographers. And that's what pains me about this industry. It's one cliche after another, right? Cliche after cliche, plagiarism after plagiarism, and it just never ends. And they should always, what I've always said, is just stick with classic, timeless photography. Never engage in this nonsense, because you know it's going to be here today and gone tomorrow, so why bother? Just stay with the classics, and you can never go wrong. Okay, we've seen this image on the left before. Kind of reminds me of a younger Catherine Zeta-Jones, right? She kind of has that look. Of course it isn't, but it kind of looks like her. Gigi Hadid on the right. Not a flattering image at all. She's not part. Now here's what kills me. Now say if she was modeling for a jewelry company, right? Say if she's advertising these earrings, you can say, okay, the makeup isn't all that great, right? Because the emphasis is on the earring. But how can they botch this? It's a makeup company doing a shoot with Gigi Hadid, and they screw up the makeup. So please explain that to me. How a makeup company can do a shoot and screw up the makeup. So if they're trying to sell the makeup, it's kind of not working. Hello, Maybelline. If you're going to shoot Gigi, you might want to get the makeup right if you're trying to sell the product. Forgive the sarcasm. I rarely engage in sarcasm, but you know, it's just sometimes I get a little right. It's just I don't know. I'm just at a complete loss sometimes at these rookie mistakes I see in these magazines. That's the reason I included this one. Is this guy looks so much like John Ritter, you know, from Three's Company back in the day. This guy could pass almost as like, you know, we have those celebrity impersonators or whatever. Kind of looks like John Ritter. And here this is another advertisement for Plus One. Now this is a competitor. Do you remember these are masturbational aids for women? And the one we saw with the Delacroix, it was the reference from Delacroix and Les Mis, the musical. That was called the Satisfier. And this is yet a new one now, Plus One. It's a competing brand, right? But you see here they're not relying on some ridiculous imagery, right? As far as what the Satisfier did. Totally, right? Totally misused the context of revolution in their advertising. But this is pretty straightforward, and I can respect this because this is far much more straightforward, and to the point, as opposed to the Satisfier. Okay, now we get to the Angelina Jolie shoot. Let me see who the photographer is here. Okay, Alexei Lubomirsky. So we saw him just the last episode in Harper's. He did, I forgot who was he shooting, and I'm trying to recall. But anyways, it was not a very good shoot. And again, I talk about him being like Peter Lindbergh, running hot and cold. Now, see, he's always, it's almost like he's, you know, hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold. So 2 shoots ago, he was hot. The last shoot, he was cold, and now he's hot again. These images with Angelina Jolie are quite nice. Okay. I don't care too much for this one. This is so fake, and I hate when they do this. So they've got some coffee table books here. It looks like Italy. Just at a glance, these books look like they're taken in Italy. Just, you know, or their paintings. It actually looks like they're paintings, like reference books, you know, the greatest paintings and so forth. But my point is, you can tell this has clearly been put out on display as part of the shoot. Now, how often are you going to walk into somebody's home You find these books on the floor lying open like this, right? So then why do it in a photo shoot, right? If you don't find that naturally occurring, then why would you put them out here as a prop in a shoot? So this is what I mean about Lubomirski. You can't count on him, right? He's always hot and cold. So here, terrible styling. Now I don't know if he styled it. It might be a different person styling it. And maybe, in fairness, maybe it's just him shooting it. But my point is, this is not working. This is so cliche. This is so grade school. This is sickening. You come over here, and this is a beautiful image. It's quite nice, but it's over-processed. So you can't hang on this on Lubomirski for the most part. It's probably been sent to a Photoshop technician, and the technician over-processed it. But you see what I mean about him running hot and cold? Lubomirski, he's all over the road. You just never know which Lubomirski's going to show up for the shoot. Is it going to be the hot Lubomirski or the cold Lubomirski, right? Again, just like Lindbergh. You never know. Never know which one's going to show up for the shoot. Okay, I don't know who took these. Let me see. Cole Sprouse. Cole Sprouse is the photographer. Now the image on the left is quite dreadful, right? That is actually pretty horrible. But look at on the right. Again, we get this hot and cold in these photographers, right? So look how cold this is. This is a terrible image. Should have never gone to print. But yet the same photographer shot this one, and it's absolutely gorgeous, beautiful photograph. So how can you have a photographer? Again, we talk about Lubomirski and Lindbergh and Bruce Weber to a lesser extent. They're all over the map, right? All over the doggone road. And these are both quite lovely here. The one on the left. Now we talk about Tri-X versus T-Max in the film world, right? The black and whites. So you can see this image here is very contrasty. It's full of darks and whites, blacks and whites. And there's some mids, right? But the contrast, this is a really ramped up contrast. So this is the way T-Max would look. Now we've seen Tri-X before, but this is definitely, if this were film, this is definitely a T-Max as opposed to Tri-X because of the contrasty nature of the photo. And it just works. It's a beautiful photo. This one over here on the right, it's nice. The saturation's been bumped. So you can see they've taken this, right, a raw image, and it's been post-processed, of course, but I'm talking about this is not how colors normally appear in a raw. They're a little bit more muted than this. So the Photoshop technician has taken saturation, either saturation or vibrance, and just bumped it right a little bit, right, to give this color a little kick. And it's really working here, the little amplification of color. But I can't get over this image on the left, how beautiful that is. Especially the shadows. See the shadows right here and the legs, right where the light is hitting, and then you have shadows up here too. Look at that. Just study that for a moment, please. And that is really quite grand. It's just a lovely image. Wow. So we talk about frameable images, right? This is on thin standard weight paper. If this would have been on heavy cardstock, you can see there's no text anywhere. These are editorials. These are not advertisements. So if this were some perfume company, right, we're not seeing the big gigantic perfume bottle and the name of the company. This is an editorial. So it's been spared from a lot of excessive nonsense, right? No logos, there's no text. But my point, if this would have been on heavy cardstock, wham, there's your X-Acto knife. And that belongs in a gallery or museum. It's really that lovely. Okay. This is pretty cool here. I don't like the color temperature. The Photoshop technician has taken the color temperature too far into the incandescent, right, into the yellowish gold. So this is not daylight. This whole image has been pulled into the golden yellow, and I really don't particularly care for it. And the same here, and it's been over processed. So there's been a lot of surgery done on her face with Photoshop, which was unnecessary. So you have over processing in both image improper color temperature in both images. And the sad thing is, what's lamentable is if they would have dialed back the heavy editing, these both could have been lovely. But again, these images have been destroyed by somebody in Photoshop not knowing when to say when and over processing the images. And yet again, Givenchy. So what's cool is, I think now these are 3 different advertisements, so these are different, right? So one, I think a different set was sent to Harper's, one was sent to Vogue, and yet a completely different set was sent to ELLE. So instead of the same advertisement, different images were sent, and I thought that was pretty cool. But again, we have documented by Craig McDean. All right, we've covered that before. I'm not going to even go there again because that would be just too much coverage on that. Just wonderful images. Okay, that wraps it up. This is another Eddie Slimane. Right, he's taken over at Celine. He's really, I think he's very autocratic in his approach to management. I don't think he delegates a lot. And that's one thing I want to talk, just if I may, about Leadership 101. And I think Eddie Slimane's Achilles heel, and I've seen this before, as you know, and I don't mean to mention it too much, but I've been in the U.S. Army a very long time. And I've seen horrible leaders and I've seen good leaders. And Eddie Slimane reminds me of the very toxic, micromanaging, right, the leader who cannot delegate. And if you research into Eddie Slimane, the amount of creative control he wants, I think it's very apparent to me. Now again, this is just a judgment call on my part. I think he has a lot of difficulty delegating and trusting the people around him. He micromanages the living hell out of all those around him, and I think it's a very toxic leadership style. And what you do is you kill morale within a company if you don't trust the people in your company to make executive decisions. If you have to approve everything, right, then you kill all the initiative of your co-workers, right, especially those higher up in the chain, right, and those very senior in leadership. If you can't trust them to make a decision, if everything has to go to Slimane personally, then people just start bailing the company and morale just goes south in a minute. And I think that's the effect that Slimane has wherever he goes. Again, it's just a hunch on my part. I have no proof of this whatsoever. I just think it's a hunch. Wherever he goes, he kills the company he works for because of his narcissism and his demand for autocracy, right, a dictatorship. So we'll see where this goes. Now, he's new to Celine. He's been there since 2018. He's only been there a year, and we'll see how long he lasts at Celine. I'm thinking it's not going to be very long, but I could be wrong. Okay, and there we have it, September 2019, ELLE magazine. I thank you for staying with me. If you like this, please give me a thumbs up. If you dislike this, really teach me a lesson and click the down button, not only once, but click it twice. And really teach me a lesson, okay? All right. We'll see you in the next video, and thank you again for your time.